Good morning, everyone. My name is Harold Long. I'm an alcoholic. It's great to be here. Sobriety date's April 7th, 1987. My home group is the Tri-Lakes Group in Branson, Missouri. Yeah, bring it. I reside in Branson, Missouri, but I live in Alcoholics Anonymous. Just really need to make that clear. And it's great to be here. It's just been a great weekend for me. It's to see old friends. Friends I've known for years and years, a lot of them from being out here, and friends that I get to share the podium with from time to time, and it's just a privilege and an honor to be here, in all honesty. And so I'm grateful for that. I could just easily say amen. We can go home right now, as far as I'm concerned. Jimmy and Mary Beth might like it too bad, but I could easily do that. But what a privilege to be here. I mean, if you're new, how many people here, just show of hands, just so I can get a vision, how many people here have less than a year of sobriety? Just in the house. Not very many. That's pretty well. That's not very many. Well, that's awesome. But I hope you heard something this weekend that'll make a difference in how your life turns out. I know I have. It's just been special. This weekend I was thinking of Debbie. I've known Debbie the longest out of anybody here, and I showed Debbie a picture that her and I were a part of back in 1988. You know, she was speaking at a conference, and I was there, and I was on step none still at that point in time in my life, you know. And but I was out there to make the dance floor happen. I showed up, looked like one of the Jackson 5. True story. I mean, I did. I had on the white shirt with the black diamonds on it, the big dance pajama pants, and couldn't wait for the Lord's Prayer to happen so I could get to the dance floor. And she happened to catch me out the door, and we got a photograph of that. And I still have brown hair and weighed about 160 pounds. It was a long time ago. But and then yesterday we got to go to Dr. Silkworth's grave, and which I've been to before. It's a special place, and I haven't been there when we did the eulogy though, and that was just very powerful for me. And but I was able to take another picture with Debbie all these years later, and it's just a circle of life in this thing if you stay here long enough. It's a beautiful thing. I want to thank Jimmy and Mary Beth, who are just awesome. I have some inner circle guys here, and I'll talk more about that. But it's really important to have inner circle guys in your life. And gals, you need to have the same thing. And so I have some of those inner circle guys here. Billy just showed up this morning. Billy's one of those guys in my life. Jimmy's been one of those guys for a long time. Charlie's part of that. I mean, just guys that know what's going on in my life. You know, it's not a secret to where my life's at and what's going on. And that's, my life depends on that. And so we're going to spend some time on that this morning. I just want to share with you two important dates that are really important in my life. The first one's April 7th, 1987. And April 7th, 1987, I was sitting in a jail cell arrested for my 5th DWI conviction. I was going on 22 years old. I just got a 4th DWI about 6 weeks before that and was involved in a fatality drunk driving accident it was a couple weeks before that. So all in the span of less than 2 months, I had 2 DWIs, which ended up being felony DWIs. Parole violation on my way back to the penitentiary. I'm 22 years old, sitting in a cell in my underwear, broken as you can be. Just broken. I went to my first AA meeting in 1979 in a correctional facility. That's where I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. It didn't stick, I didn't want it, but the seed was planted. But here we are almost 10 years later, and I'm in a cell again. And I said probably the most honest prayer I've ever said in my life, and I've heard that prayer shared right here so many times. 3 words: God help me. I didn't know that prayer would be answered, but the reality of it is from that day till now, I've never picked up another drink of alcohol. And it's a long time ago. I came to AA just like I did everything else in my life. It's been laid out beautifully by Charlie and Katie and everybody else who's laid out the malady, the illness, the 100 forms of fear, self-pity that Ron took us through. Kent took us through all the demons that we deal with here. Just on and on and on. That stuff ate my lunch. But, you know, I had a desire not to drink, but I didn't have a desire to turn my life over to God. And I sure didn't have a desire to have you tell me how to live my life, you know. I just approached recovery how I did everything else. I'm going to do it how I want, when I want, the way I want. If you don't like it, screw you. I mean, that mentality had been with me my whole life. I planted that flag, that right to myself. I planted as far back as I can remember in my life. I planted that flag. And so I showed up in AA that way. And I was attracted to the fellowship. I loved the laughter. I loved the characters. I mean, there's a lot of characters, just like there was when we were drinking. I was a facility cripple. I lived in the facilities, you know. And the facilities always have a lot of characters in them. You have a lot of people with the same name, so we had like Furniture Frank and Walking Frank and, you know. City Frank and Big Don and all these crazy characters that lived in the... But that's how I came in. I avoided all this stuff. I was on step none for a long time. I loved it when we were at the International last time. The International, I forget who it was spoke, I think it was Friday night, but they got up and what they said was beautiful, and they said, I did everything right in AA, but 12 things. And that was my life. And so I say that because at age 25, after I'd already been sober almost 3 years, is when I finally listened to you guys. There's three types of people that come to AA. There's those who watch it happen, there's those who make it happen, and there's those who don't know what's happening at all, right? And I've been all three of those guys. I sure didn't know what was happening when I got here. I watched it happen for a long time. But when I got into the make it happen crowd, it changed my life. In my experience, in 32 plus years I've been sober, is most people watch it happen. It's been my experience. But my life changed when I got around those people. But here I am, 25 years old, and this is a really important day. I can't tell you the date or the hour. I can just tell you it's right around 3 years sobriety. I found myself at this guy's house asking him to be my sponsor. I said, and his name is Roy. I said, Roy, will you be my sponsor? And he goes, yeah, Harold. I goes, I've watched you almost the whole time you've been in AA. He goes, but yeah, come over, let's talk. And I went to his house, and it was a life-changing day for me. Because, well, Harold, you've been around almost 3 years. Tell me about your life. I said, Roy, I'll tell you about my life. I'm 25 years old. I got a criminal record. I don't have a driver's license. I don't know if I ever drive again. I don't have an education. I quit school when I was 13. I don't even have a GED. I live in the basement of a house. I got a deadbeat car. I can't even legally drive. It's held together by AA bumper stickers. I chased AA boy chased AA girl on campus when I got here. AA girl got pregnant right off the bat. AA girl didn't want anything to do with recovery after about 6 months. AA girl wanted to leave AA, leave me, leave the whole situation, and she did that. And this all happened in the first 3 years of my sobriety. And as a result of that, I found myself in a courtroom at 3 years of sobriety. And in this courtroom, I hadn't drank in 3 years. I had some people in AA there. I had people there to support me. But I'm 3 years old, and I'm sitting there, and I filed a paternity suit against this girl that left AA for this child. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any resources. I robbed Peter to pay Paul to even get to this point. But I went to this trial fully confident that I was going to walk out of there victorious for the first time in my life. I left home when I was 13. I was in juvenile correctional facilities and facilities in and out of my life almost from the time I was 12 until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. Was on the run or inside some institution the entire time. And so here I am sitting in this courtroom, and this all happened with no alcohol in my life. This just happened with AA boy meets AA girl on campus. And I sat in there, and it was time for the prosecutor to get up, and the prosecutor got up. And man, he filleted me like a fish, right there in front of everybody. And there was nothing I could say about it. And I had my best defense. I had my best game forward. I suited up. I showed up. Had probably close to 30 people in AA there to support me. But at the end of that day, that judge hit that mallet on the table and said, we think it's in the best interest of this child to allow this. She had gotten married, and they had filed countersuit to adopt this child. And we think it's in the best interest of this court and the best interest of this child to remove Mr. Long's rights away from his parents and to grant this adoption. And I walked out of that courtroom, and I was just crushed. And I was just crushed. It was the worst sentence I ever got in my life. And I went home, and I crawled up in bed like a little baby, and I was just broken. This happened with no alcohol. Ronnie said it best. We look back in our lives when we see we made decisions based on self, will later put us in a position to be hurt. My past followed me way into this thing. And here I am sitting there broken. I'm 25, so I'm laying out this whole list. There's a big blame list, an excuse list, why my life is in the way it is. I just laid it out there, man. I said, this is how my life is. This is where I sat at your house, 25 years sober, or 25 years old, 3 years sober. And what he said changed my life. It changed my life. He said, Harold, I hear everything you're sitting here telling me this morning. I hear it all, my friend. No doubt you've been dealt a tough hand in life. There's no question about it. Lived a tough life. Grew up on the streets. I had a mom like Ronnie. Me and Ronnie are mama's boys. I grew up with a single mom who came out of a mental institution and just did her best to do the best she could. But she was never around working dead-end jobs. I just grew up on the streets. And it just led to a dark life. And so I said, he said, but Harold, everything you have in your life, everything you have sitting right here, right now you have in your life, you've attracted to you by who you become. And the day you're man enough to own that is the day you're on your way to some real change. But until you can own that, you're going to do what your dad did. My dad stuck a shotgun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. That's how he quit drinking. Or you're going to go out and try the old game again because you're not happy about your sobriety. So the $1 million question sitting right here, right now, here at age 25, 3 years sober, is simply this. Do you want to grow or do you want to go? And I wanted to grow, but I knew he was going to pitch the 12 steps. And the 12 steps were just worldly, they were spiritual in nature, but I had a worldly, self-reliant mathematical system for my life. I mean, call me crazy, but I think I could be a little bit more spiritual if I had a few $100s wrapped around my life. That's what I was describing to. I needed a better car, I needed a license possibly, I needed a better job, a better girlfriend. I mean, I needed a lot of things. And somehow or another, I get this stuff right, then I'll be you. But it's delusional thinking. Katie lifted it up, it's delusional. I come from a great line of sponsorship. Roy was my first sponsor for a long time, but then eventually Tom I, who has been mentioned from this podium many times this weekend, became my sponsor for most of my sobriety. And, you know, that's like being sponsored by Andy Griffith. He's got that North Carolina accent. Well, you did what? You know, is that right? Is that right? It's like Andy Griffith sponsoring you, man. And he didn't say a lot, but what he said, man, it just hit you, you know. And so he was a model until he got ill. He got ill about 6 years ago, dementia. And so Steve Lee stepped in and filled that role for me, and that's who I'm accountable to today, you know. You notice that they put all the southern people at the end. They put the hillbillies at the end of this thing. You had all these high-energy Texas people and L.A. people and all these people, and then when they get down to the end, we'll just bring the hillbillies on at the end. Right? Somebody talk their best right there with it. So here we get there. But that's where I was at. This is where I was at. Maybe you're there this weekend. Maybe you come into this place and that's where you're at. But I just didn't see how the 12 steps were going to change my life. I couldn't subscribe to it. It was spiritual mathematics. And it is what it is. It means 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4. It means the impossible becomes possible when you grab hold of these 12 things and you start to apply them in your life. That's what it means. In the preface of the 12 and 12 and the foreword of the 12 and 12, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it simply says that the 12 steps are spiritual in nature. They're a set of principles, and if they're practiced as a way of life, they will expel the compulsion to drink and lead to a life where you're happy and usefully whole. That's a powerful, powerful problem. That's what I would call a set of absolute truths. What does that mean? It means absolutely anybody that takes these steps and applies them to their life will not be the same person on the other end of that. And I couldn't buy that. It just didn't make any sense to me. And so that's where my struggle was. That's where I found myself at age 25 here. But sponsorship got me to take actions I didn't believe in. It got me to take those next steps in a sense. And it didn't happen in one big cataclysmic explosion. But little by little, my life started to change. Tom gave me a quote early in my sobriety. He said, Harold, it's really important you hear what I'm going to tell you. When preparation meets opportunity and God does the introduction, amazing things can happen in your life. But the problem is you haven't been prepared for the opportunities. It isn't that the opportunities aren't there. You're just not prepared for them. And I was stuck, and Ken really hit on this hard yesterday, Kent did, on victimization. I was stuck in victimization. I mean, I had a blame list and excuse list why my life was in the condition that it was in. And the problem with victimization is in a guy like me, is you could spend the rest of your life in a 9x7, 10x6 cell, and it's not your fault. You can sit in a hotel room somewhere and drink yourself to death, and it's not your fault. You can go out and blow your veins out with needles, your nose up with pipes, and it's not your fault. That's a very dark place to be. But this delusion that it's not me is the crux of our problem. And it always is. And that's why when we get to step 10, this is why we got to continue to do this stuff. There's a story about a frog one day. Little frog, the drought was coming. It was summertime. The drought's in. I mean, it's hot. His little water supply is almost down to nothing. He's going to die. He knows he's going to die. He's trying to be creative. He sees these 2 blackbirds fly down, big old crows. And all of a sudden he gets a revelation. He says, you guys can help me out if you're willing. The crow said, how are we going to help you out? He says, see that stick? He goes, yeah, I see it. He says, well, if you each grab a hold of a stick on one end of it and hold it like this, I'll grab the middle with my mouth, and you guys can fly, and I'll just hang on, and then you fly me to the next body of water and then just drop me off. And they said, that's awesome. We can do that for you. He says, awesome. So they grab the stick, he grabs it with his mouth, and they take off flying. They're flying to the next body of water. And as they're flying, they go over a crowd of people. And a couple of people in the crowd look up, and they see it. They couldn't even believe it. They see these two crows flying with a stick, with a frog that's got his mouth around the stick. They were out of their mind. And one of them says, wow, that's genius. I wonder who thought of that. And the little frog said, me! Right? That's the dilemma that we face, right? We're that guy. We're that frog. And that's why we got to do it. I mean, you've heard from 4 through 9 how to turn your life around, how to transform your life. I mean, it couldn't have been said any more beautiful than it's been said here all weekend. And Mike brought us home last night in a beautiful way, what reconciliation, what restoration looks like, and how beautiful that is. And so we do all this work, and all this work happened in my life, and I don't have time to get into all those things what God did in my life, but here I am. And we're at step 10. And it says, this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we take personal inventory and continue to set any new mistakes, right any new mistakes as we go along. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? I mean, the best illustration I can give you is right here. Charlie lifted up the tube, said you got to have this channel cleared. This is how we show up here. This vision, this is your tube that is the higher power. Goes to the clouds, taps into God. This is how we show up. Basically, nuts, right? You were a little nuts when you got here? I was a little bit nuts. But this is why I was so spiritually broken. This is my channel of God. It was like that for the day I was born. I mean, I didn't hear God's voice in my life. I couldn't relate to that. I mean, so when anybody would offer anything spiritual into my life, it was like, it didn't make any sense to me. He might have been talking Chinese. I didn't understand what that meant. And I got to AA, and I started this journey with Roy in the steps, and all of a sudden something cool happened with this tube. All of a sudden something awesome happened. And it happened in step 1. It happened in that jail cell. It happened when they did that because it cracked the lid on this tube for the first time. And this tube gets cracked. And the seal gets broken for the first time. And things start to happen, and I start to give my life to God, and all of a sudden my little tube starts to get emptied out. Things start to happen just a little bit. But things are feeling better. Things are moving. Things are shaking. Life's starting to take on things. I mean, you quit drinking and quit abusing alcohol, your life gets a little better. But it plateaus pretty quick. But you start this spiritual journey, and you start to do a little bit more work, and you get in and do that step 3 Ronnie was talking about. And then you get into that step 4 Kent took us through, man, you really get into a lot of that stuff, right? And it's, what is it, step 5 says, it's a step 5 when we for most of us, for the first time, really start to experience God for the first time. Why? Because our channels are getting cleaned up for the first time in our life. And then if we do the work, what Mike talked about last night, Katie lifted it up, actually do the work. And why do I say that? Because I've sponsored literally hundreds of guys in 30 plus years. I've heard a lot more 4th and 5th steps than I ever have 8th and 9th steps. Man, it's not even close. We quit before the magic's open. So many of us are walking around with our tubes half full. Man, there's so much promise left in your life, and you just stop. But let's say we do that, and we do that 8 and 9, and we do 6 and 7, we clear it away. We still got a few nuts. We're always going to be a little nuts here, right? But our channel's open. Our life's full. We got this connection. We're in the world of the Spirit now. And why do I want to do step 10? Because I don't want this thing to get filled back up. But it happens. It happens. And why does it happen? Because of what Katie lifted up. Because of the pride. Because of the fear. Because of the malady. What everybody's lifted up this weekend. This internal separation from you and from God is the malady that we suffer from. And it doesn't go away because we quit drinking. We get free from it, our tube gets cleaned out, but it's not a permanent place. But yet so many of us stop. And it's like, God, I got this. I got it from here. And we just go out and try to live life. Life gets good. You get employed, you get jobs, you get careers, you get opportunities, you get married, you have kids, you do all kinds of cool stuff. And it's easy to stop. I remember walking into one of my first Step 10 meetings, and an African-American man, one of my heroes in St. Louis, he lives in San Diego now, his name's Louis Trotter. Louis is probably close to 50 years sober. Didn't have any education. Wasn't articulate that in any great way, but man, what he said was just impactful. I got a whole book called Lewisisms. I mean, really, just one-liners from Lewis that just changed my life. And this is what Lewis said to me one day. I come in and live in one of my woes. It wasn't working any step 10. My tube was starting to get clogged up again. I couldn't start not hear God's voice. And Lewis talked like B.B. King. So when he talked, you just shut up and listen. And this is what he said to me. I laid out my problem in this little step 10 meeting, and he said, "Well, Harold, sounds like you got a problem with the shit sandwich." And then he stops. He just stops. And every time a hillbilly's going to bite, every time. So I bite. I said, "All right, Lewis, what's the shit sandwich?" "Well, I'm glad you asked." And this is what he said. And I hope you hear what Lewis said. "Harold, the pride's one piece of bread, and the fear's the other. And you know what the problem with the shit sandwich is, Harold?" I said, "What's that, Lewis?" "You're the one eating it." Think about that. You're the one eating it. There's many of you need to take a napkin right now and wipe your mouth on. You've been dining on a whole feast of those for years. And that's where I was. That's where I was. I was caught between the bogeymen, pride and fear. Pride says I don't have to. Fear says I dare not. And where this really gets troublesome, and we really don't speak enough here at this point, but it's true. And you can just take that word pride, just add one more word in front of it, call it spiritual pride. Destroys so many people. People that have a spiritual life, people that have been called to walk into the spiritual life, which is everybody here. Every one of us are called to lead the spiritual life. You wonder why you see clergy in the news, pedophilia with Catholic priests, pornography at all-time high with evangelical ministers. Why? Because of spiritual pride. Because they all suffer from the same malady we suffer from. And you had the problems, you had the trouble, and pride says, man, this is the narrative, the same old narrative, the imposter narrative that we've listened to our whole life, that we should be better, could be better, ought to be better. And at this stage of your sobriety, you should not be thinking like that, you should not be behaving like that. Just figure it out. Suck it up, buttercup, just figure it out. But don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. And that becomes our problem. So this tube, we want to keep it clear, and we do that through steps in. And it says we vigorously commence this way of life as we cleaned up our past. We have entered the world of the Spirit. What does that mean? What does that mean that we entered the world of the Spirit? It means that we're out of this self-induced bondage of everything's about me. The spotlight's always about me. Me. But I wake up in the morning, the radio station's on, defaulted to WIIFM. What's in it for me? It was just automatically there, right? Didn't have to turn that in. It was just on that station, right? We all heard the little saying, "I'm not much, but I'm all I think about," right? Or even a better one is, "Enough about me, what do you think of me?" Right? We've all heard these things as we go through life. And so here it is. But what is that? It means that for a time that we're separated from that I'm more interested in you than you are me. That's where the magic happens. I can remember riding with Tom I in the car one day, and we're riding. He's got the speaker on with a guy that he sponsors on the phone. And the guy's just going, wow. He's laying out his problem, how he's trying to fix it. I mean, he's like an auctioneer. He's just pouring it. Tom's looking at me, grinning the whole time. And I'm just sitting there. I'm waiting because I know he's going to hit him, and he's going to hit him with a one-liner. I know it's going to be one line. And it's going to be so deep. And the guy finally stops long enough for Tom to get in, and he goes, whoa. Yeah, you're working on the wrong patient. Do you hear that? You're working on the wrong patient. And there's this dead silence. I'm sitting there going, what the hell does that mean? I was trying to... But that's what it means. You've entered this new spirit. I mean, you're more invested in other people. You live an other-centered life today than you are yourself. And the magic that happens with that, the magic what happens when I'm invested in you and not me, is the most beautiful thing on the planet. Steve and I got here. He picked me up. I had a long flight because it got delayed. It took me hours to get here. I finally got here. We went to a restaurant at 9:30 at night. We didn't get in there about us. We started getting engaged with the waitress that was there. Come to find out, she's 2 years sober, living here. That would have never happened if it would have just been about us. So I mean, it's that being separated from yourself now that you're part of the world. You're not part of the world system. The world system's out there saying, hey, you got to change all this. In our program, this World of the Spirit says, go out and be the change in the world that you want to see. Go out and be it. Instead of getting all caught up in the world system trying to change it. Just go live it out, be it. And what a beautiful way to live. And that's what the World of the Spirit brings to us. And it says, our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. What does that mean? It means that we're all created for a purpose. That's one of the revelations we have here, that we work through the shame and the guilt and all this imposter narrative we've been listening to our whole life. What shapes this narrative? A lot of things, folks. The way you grew up, your parents, how they influence you, your kids, your siblings, school, neighborhoods, sex, drugs, rock and roll, go on down the line. But this narrative gets shaped by all that. So this narrative is powerful. It's the only voice I heard because the tube was clogged when I got here. It's the only voice. It had a stronghold on my life. But I got here. And I started to hear a new narrative, And that narrative says, grow deeper, get in deeper, grow, become more effective. Tom would always have us doing effectiveness inventories. What is that? That means whatever you're doing, whether you're doing prison work, whether you're doing CPC work, whether you're talking about your home group, or you're talking about your marriage, or you're talking about this, every once in a while just stop and do an effectiveness inventory. How effective are you at what you're doing? Because we're really good at just going full blast and never stopping to say, how are we doing with all this? How effective is what we're doing in the prison? How effective is it how we're living our marriage out? Really, how effective is it? So just stop once in a while and do those inventories. And I was really, I was sponsored that way. And it's not an overnight matter. It says it should last for a lifetime. This whole practice of inventory, stopping and looking at your life. So that's why having an inner circle in your life, having people you invite into your life that you're accountable to, but they're also doing life with you. It's a privilege when somebody invites you into their inner circle. That's a huge privilege. For you to be able to pour into them and speak truth to them, and then allow them to pour into you and speak truth to you, that is a privilege and a half. And I have that, man, and I'm so grateful for that. And I want you to have that too. It's just really important. It says this is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these things crop up, we ask God to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately. Immediately. That means you're going to have to be doing this stuff all the time. And make amends quickly if you've harmed anybody. Then resolutely turn your thoughts to someone else you can help. Love and tolerance is our code. Our job is just to go out and love people. How awesome is that? Just go out and love the people in your life. I couldn't do that to save my life when I got here. Today, it's one of the biggest joys of my life. Tom used to say, you want to have some fun? I go, yeah. He goes, let's go over to this group. None of us have ever been there. And he goes, let's stand at the door and greet people to their own home group. He goes, just watch the look on their face. You're like, who the hell is that? It's just awesome. But you can do that anywhere. Just stay out in front of the hotel. Welcome. Like, who the hell are you? But you can have fun. It's just a fun way to live when you're out of yourself. But it's just about loving people. It's about tolerating people. You work through all this stuff. You work through your isms. You work through your phobias in life. You work through all the things that the world separates us from. Bo said it great last night. He gave the reference to the international. When the flag ceremony is coming out, these people come out, the unity that's there. Don't care what religion you are. We don't care what color of skin you are. We don't care what your theology is. You're a creation of God. We're just glad you're here. We're glad to call you brother. We're glad to call you sister. How great is that? That's beautiful. And we're a part of that. We get to live that life out wherever we go. We don't have to get sucked into debating societies. Don't have to get sucked into the politics of life. Just go out and love people. It's just awesome. It's just one of the best ways to live. It says, we cease fighting anybody, even alcohol, for this time sanity is returned. We are seldom interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it like a hot flame. We act sanely and normally, and we find this all happens automatically. We will see our new attitude toward liquor has been given to us without any thought or effort on our own. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. It's called the grace of God, friends. You didn't earn it. You didn't deserve it. But it's really important that you get it. And it's one of the biggest struggles we get here. It's why we get hung up sometimes. But I'm just telling you, it's one that this new attitude comes. And you think about it. I think about my life and as a relationship with alcohol. I haven't craved or desired alcohol in over 32 years. I can live in the world today, go to all kinds of functions. Hey, do you want a drink? No, sir, I don't want a drink. You sure you don't want a drink? Yeah, I'm positive I don't want a drink. Are you sure? I said, yeah, I'm sure I don't want a drink. Why not? Because I'll break out. Bites, windshields, teeth. Oh, you're one of those guys. Yeah, I'm one of those guys. But I don't have that fight today. Does that mean it's forever? No. Doesn't mean it's forever. But that's what we're called to do. And it says, we haven't sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. How amazing is that? Because that was the thing that I could not get rid of. This relationship with King Alcohol was everywhere. Man, I thought about it 24/7. And now it's been removed. That's just amazing. If you're sitting here this weekend and you have a desire not to drink, what a beautiful, magical gift that is. And you better cherish it with everything you got. Because if you lose it and it sticks its teeth back into you and drags you out in the street and kicks the dog snot nasty out of you, this time it might just go ahead and cut your throat. And it happens all the time. And it's just the thing that happens. It says it's easy to let up on the spiritual action or the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. And we are headed for trouble if we do. For alcohol, a subtle foe. What are they talking about? Let me show you this. I want to give Let me ask you a question. What's this one about? What's wrong with this one? Dead? What's up with this one? Well, that's where your delusion comes in. They're both dead. This one just doesn't know it yet. Think about that. This one doesn't know it yet. And we have an illness of delusion. We say denial. Tom pointed this out to me early in my sobriety. We say denial. But denial is only mentioned twice in the big book. Once in Bill's story, once in the spiritual appendix. And both times it's talking about denying a power greater than ourselves. When it talks about our relationship with King Alcohol and this illness, this mountain, it's way past denial. It's delusional and illusional. I can't see myself for what I really am. I can't differentiate the true from the false. That's way deeper than that. And that's not just with alcohol, friends. That's with every aspect of my life. I cannot see myself for what I really am. And I'll defend it with pride. I'm not what you say that I am. It's not as bad as you say that it is. And so here we are, and it's so easy. We stay here. We're plugged into the source. Here's the source. I'm alive. I'm growing. Heard a lady many years at the International said, Harold, remain green. Green things are growing. Right? You got to stay plugged in. But the minute you pull away, it doesn't happen usually in one big cataclysmic explosion. It's a slow fade. It begins with one word. It's called compromise. The compromise almost always starts in our prayer life, if we even have a prayer life. And then the transparency with a sponsor or other people in our life. And then, and that's the delusion of it. Because you can hang on to your leaves for quite a while, brother, and you're a dead person walking. You're as dead as that other branch I showed you. You're a dead person walking. And I tell you, there's a graveyard right here in Newark that we can go there. Right on top of the tombstone it says, at least I didn't think about drinking. I've been to a lot of funerals, friends, for people that died other than sticking substance back in their life. For guys, and Katie lifted it up, she was right on. For guys, it's usually in the sex thing. I call it AA's dirty little secret. I've seen sex conduct destroy more people than anything in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the gospel truth. Debbie's here. I can share this through her sponsorship line. A young lady that she married a husband that grew up in my AA community. Their kids grew up in my house. Solid AAs, if you want to call them rock stars, they were that. They started groups. The biggest groups still exist in St. Louis, Missouri today. They helped start that. He had a great job, great career. Money wasn't the issue, but he was an engineer, got on the road a little bit with another female engineer and ended up in an affair. His wife was in a program, and he couldn't overcome it once the news come out. He called me to his house. He said, Harold, I've screwed up my life, man. I said, Joe, you made a poor decision, poor mistake, but you got a wife who's really ready here to reconcile with you. You got 3 beautiful kids that love you. You made a mistake, but your friends are going to love you. We're going to walk through this together. He couldn't recover from it, friends. And he went out and he took a piece of belt, and he hung himself in one of the most grotesque and painful ways you could ever say. And I had to sit and do the eulogy with this kid sitting right where Anna and them are. Kids that grew up with my kids. More people that are here today at his funeral. It's the most heartbreaking thing. What happened? He fell into this delusion. I'm still going to meetings, going to all these meetings. It becomes legalistic. This legalistic part of AA can kill us. I'm going to meetings, I'm doing these things, I'm sponsoring guys, but we're not being transparent about what's going on. The problem still centers in the mind. You know, the lack of transparency is always going to be my biggest deal. Roy told me that right out the gate. Harold, there's 3 things I know about an alcoholic. 1, they lie. 2, they lie. And 3, they lie about lying. Right? And he says, and Harold, alcoholics are master. They've been gifted with this. They fabricate and elaborate on anything that's going on in their life. The truth is never good enough. It's like the old man who was down fishing on the ocean out here, and a little kid comes by and says, Mister, have you caught any fish today? He says, if I catch this one and one more, that'll give me 2 for the day. Kid walks away going, awesome. The guy hadn't caught nothing. But he couldn't just say I hadn't caught nothing. And I could tell the integrity of somebody really quick, come play golf with me. Come play golf. I watch you suck. You suck. We all suck at golf for the most part. But you shoot a 98, put me down for a 96. Like somehow another 96 now is better than 97. It's still under the suck factor. You suck, you know. But you can't. But just to be transparent is the biggest challenge anybody here has. To be authentic, to be who you are. And this is where step 10 is so vital in our life. We have to have transparency, or we're dead people walking. We're like a cordless drill. We can unpack us, put a new battery in, we can go. We sound good. But eventually, and eventually you just click it and nothing happens anymore. And you're dead at that point. So this is why step 10 and step 11 are so imperative in our life. And we can't fall in this delusion that, yeah, I'm still green, I still got leaves blowing. I mean, you're a dead man walking, you're a dead person walking if you unplug from this deal. And I don't want to get unplugged. As it wraps us up here and it takes us into, it says, to this extent we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop the vital sixth sense. What is that? What is the sixth sense? Definition says the sixth sense is an ability to know something without using the ordinary 5 senses of sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. So it's another sense. I mean, the reality is there's many more senses than the 5 senses. But the idea of the sixth sense is I can see something that most people aren't seeing. I can see God working in this situation. I can see God in creation. My life shapes. I can go out and pick up go out here in the ground and pick up a handful of dirt. And in that dirt, there's more living organisms than there is people on the planet. In one handful of dirt. If we just got enough clarity to see it, to know it, to experience it, to share it. That's what this thing's about. That's that sixth sense. I can see God working when nobody else can. You remember the movie of Bruce Willis? What was the famous line? I see dead people. I see people that are alive. I see God working in places that those people can't see it. That's a huge shift from where I was at. People ask me all the time, why are you so optimistic? I said, I just got holy anticipation. Because I know God's going to do something awesome. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be awesome. I already know it's going to happen. I believe it with every core of my body. And so that's what we were talking about. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. Little kid one day was in school. They gave him a take-home midterm. Man, that's like the grace of God. Here's a midterm, take it home, right? They come back to class, and they're getting ready to turn in their midterms. And the teacher says, before you hand in your midterm, I'm going to hand a little slip of paper to you. And it says, you sign off that nobody's helped you with this paper. Nobody's sat with you. You didn't talk to your mom. You didn't talk to your friends. You didn't get on the internet. This is purely your work. So they hand it to this little kid. And he's struggling with it. And he can't sign it. And finally he walks up to the teacher and says, I can't sign this. And he says, why? He says, I asked God to help me with my homework. I prayed that he would help me with my homework. And so I can't sign it. He goes, well, let me see your paper. So he hands him the paper. He's looking at it for a minute. He goes, oh, you can go ahead and sign it. He said, why? He says, because God didn't answer your prayer. Yeah. That would suck, wouldn't it? A.W. Tozer said, what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. I couldn't agree more. Bill Wilson says the most beautiful language in all of A.A.'s language, everything he's written, the most beautiful language he has is why don't you choose your own conception of God. It's powerful, powerful stuff. But what you think about that God will determine your prayer life, I can promise you. There's nobody here who's got a PhD in prayer. If I said, how many people here think they got it going on with your prayer? Can I get a show of hands? How many? None. Nobody's going to raise their hand with that. Why? Because we struggle with this thing called prayer. Why? And I'm telling you, the narrative goes back to what we think God. If I look at God as a governor, as this authority figure in my life, then prayer becomes a duty. It becomes a drudgery. It becomes an obligation. And that's how prayer was for me for a long time. I come here, sponsor said, you ask him in the morning, you thank him in the evening. That was a duty. I just did it to go along with people. I could pray in front of you guys. We could hold hands, say the Lord's Prayer, Serenity Prayer. I could do recital prayers. But when it came to just me and God and nobody else looking, I really struggled with that. What do I say? What do I do? How do I, is it even listening? Do I get caught up in wordy prayers? Do I not say any prayers at all? What do I do? And a lot of this is all impactful on the narrative I think who God is in my life. And I'm telling you, it predicates it. So if you're sitting here struggling in your prayer life this week, and I'm telling you, it's not so much your prayer life you're struggling with, it's your relationship with God. It's who you view God and who you see God in your life. It's why you struggle with it. When that narrative changed for me, it changed everything. Prayer was a process. When I just told you I started out praying, but God answered my prayer, I just didn't know it. Bill Wilson says in his story, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but he just simply says that my experience with God was, his impact on my life was sudden and profound. For most people, it doesn't come that way. It comes slowly over time, educationally. And I'm reading it one night in the prison. We're going through this workshop in the prison. We're going through that. I'm like 12 years sober. And I read that in a story, and it finally hits me like a ton of bricks. The minute I asked God in my life, sincerely on my knees, honestly sought God and said, God, help me, I've never had a drink from that moment till now. God's impact on my life was sudden and profound. I just didn't wake up or see it, because of all this delusion that we're talking about for a long time in my life. And so that's the same thing here. Is this God's impact. God answers prayers 3 ways. 4 ways, really. He says no. And no is an answer to prayer. Sometimes he says slow. Sometimes he says go. Sometimes he says, are you kidding me? Are you asking for that? Sometimes. But God always answers prayer. Always does. But how we stand here, and we come to these podiums, we sit in our meetings and we say we believe, but do we really? At the end of the day, not too far from here, Niagara Falls, the Great Blondie, 1800s, trapeze artist, famous from all over the world, from France, walks across the Niagara Falls all day long, doing trapeze acts. Hundreds of people come from Canada, Missouri, in the States to sit on the sides of the falls to watch him doing this. He goes on with a gunny sack. He goes on with 1 foot. He walks across it with stilts. He does all kinds of crazy things. Then one day his wife, who was a trapeze artist, small, petite woman, she comes with him. And he has a wheelbarrow, and he says, she gets in the wheelbarrow, and she goes across the falls with him while she's in the wheelbarrow. And he goes across the falls. Do you think I can do it again? Yeah. And he go back across the falls, and he'd scream out, do you think I can do it again? Yeah. And he looks at the crowd, do you think I can do it again? They go, yeah. Do you believe it? Yeah. We watched you do it. You're the Great Blondie. You can do it again. We believe it. Somebody come get in the wheelbarrow. It's a true story. Out of the thousands of people on record, no one ever got in the wheelbarrow. But yet they said they believed he could do it. And so I think we get caught in that trap with our own faith sometimes. That we think we believe. But do we? And so that's where I really challenge it. And I think that's where we get challenged sometimes in prayer, that we get caught in this thing. And so we look at these 11-step questions that are out there. You see them right at the beginning of the page, and they ask these questions. When we retire at night, where we constructively review our day, were we resentful, selfish, dishonest? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves we should have discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of this time? Or were we thinking what we could do for others and pack into the stream of life? These are nightly review questions. Many years ago, I got in this practice of doing these questions. Technology's made it easy. Just put them into an app. They even make apps. Spiritual Toolkit's one of those apps. I'm not promoting. I'm just saying there's apps out there that have these things for you. I just have them in my yellow notepad, and I copy and paste them into a text every night. I send it to my sponsor, and I send it out to the guys that I sponsor and the guys that are in my circle. And there's some of those guys right here in this room that get that inventory every single night. I don't tell you that to boast. I just tell you that my life depends on that. My life depends on other people being who are not emotionally invested in my life to speak into my life. I need sponsorship. I need that kind of accountability today is more than I ever did in my life. And this has a direct connection on my relationship with God. It has a direct connection on how I pray. All those things are tied to that. It's really imperative. Western meditation, which is what most of us fall into, if you look up that word meditation, the real word on it is called ruminate. For all you hillbillies and farmers out there, ruminate is what a cow does. It chews a cud. It chews down the cud and it keeps regurgitating it until it sucks every ounce of nutrients out of it before it finally digests it. And when we talk about meditation, that's what we're challenged to do with our meditation is ruminate. So that means I'm going to probably ruminate on that more than just a little bit in the morning, but throughout the day and throughout the afternoon and throughout the evening, I'm going to ruminate on whatever my meditation is, whatever my reflection is, that I need to go to it all day. Not just for a little bit in the morning and the evening. That this conscious contact comes from exercise, from us doing things, that we have to be invested in that. And then we have to be challenged with that. And so that's my challenge too, is that we think about what that really means. The writings go on to say we're going to face indecision. We're going to do different things that are going to cause us to stumble. But we don't struggle. We often be surprised that the right answers come if we have tried this for a while, if we just tried being transparent with people in our life, if we tried this invitation with God. I mean, the progression of prayer for me it's been a progression. Like I've told you what it looked like from the beginning. I can remember going on I finally got my felonies taken care of, and that took some time and sobriety, but I finally got to go where I could go on a hunting trip. And I went to my buddy Gary's house, my buddy Benny, and I'm new in this prayer life. I was on step none until year 3, so it's taken me a while. But here I am. I'm starting to develop my own little routine. I'm going to get on my knees and pray. But I never did it in front of anybody else. Then we get to the house to go deer hunting, and he goes, you guys are in this room. There's a bed on this wall. There's a bed on that wall. See you in the morning. So we go in there, and Benny's like 6 months ahead of me in sobriety. So he goes over there and gets in bed. I get over here and get in bed, shut off the lights, pitch black, no sound, can't see anything. And my battle, the spiritual battle is going on between my ears. And I got so much pride that I can't get down on my knees and pray for this guy. I'm just paralyzed with the fear of what's he going to think of me if I do this. And Benny did something beautiful that changed my life. Because I didn't know he was over there struggling with the same thing. In the pitch black, dead silence, here's what he said. Screw you, I'm praying. And I said, what'd you say? He said, screw you, man. I'm over here thinking about what you think about me. I don't care what you think about me. He starts cussing me out, man. Like I'm the bad guy that you struggle with. But we prayed together, and it changed my life. It changed my life. And so this whole process of prayer, nobody's got a PhD on it. We all struggle with it, every one of us. But I can pray today because I believe in it. I know God's not Santa Claus. I know God's not a magic wand. He's not a genie in a bottle. There's many times he said no to me. Why? Because I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't prepared for the journey. I wanted it. But just think about your own kids. Do you give your kids everything they want? Why? Because they're not mature enough for it. It would destroy them. And I think God treats us the same way. I think it's important to know that. No is an answer to prayer. And so my life changed, and I continue to grow. And God, give me the strength. Give me the willingness to do the next right thing, whatever it is you want me to do. And opportunities came. Tom told me when your preparation meets opportunity, God will do the introduction. Things started happening. The walls started to come down. The opportunities started to come to truth in my life. And I got opportunities I can't even go into. I got a chance to go into a business that I didn't qualify for. I get a license from the state of Missouri I didn't qualify for. A lot of people went to bat for me to get me those privileges. But I took advantage of those things, and I started to get an education, and I started to get some initials behind my name. And eventually I had to go back to school. And I said, because I didn't have a GED, I'm 30-something years old, been sober a long time. And sponsors Tom's like, you got to go back to school, get this GED. I said, Tom, man, I tried this when I was locked up. I can't. I quit school when I was 13. I don't know if I can do it. How big's your God? I hope he's bigger than a GED. Why don't you pray about it? Prayer works. Prayed about it. So I'm sitting in a GED class at a community college, because I can't just go past a GED. I'm sitting in a community college. I'm double-digit sobriety by now. I walk in with a suit and tie from work. I'm 30-something years old, sitting with people that are 15, 16, 17. They look like they're the rejects of the world. You know, they got leather on. They got tattoos everywhere. They got body piercings everywhere. They had so many piercings it looks like they fell down the nut and bolt section at Lowe's. You know, they had so many things. Way different than from when I was a kid. Way different. And I sat in there, I'm like, why am I can't even believe I'm here. What am I doing here? And this guy sitting next to me, his name is Robbie. Robbie had a mohawk about 10 different colors. His head was shaved. He had on big jacket with chains. He had bracelets with spikes on it. I mean, he was a piece of work. He was a piece of art. You couldn't help but look at him. And he caught me looking at him. He jumped bad right in the middle of GED class, first class. What are you looking at, old man? I couldn't even believe he told me that. But being quick, I said, well, Robbie, I made love to a parrot one time, and I want to know if you might be one of my kids, yeah? Even Robbie laughed at that. And before 16 weeks of GED class, Robbie's on my right, Theon's on my left, and I passed the class. And I went to school, and I walked across the stage and got a bachelor's degree. And a little bit later, I walked across the stage and got a master's degree. And I wrote a thesis to open a business that I started, and I raised up and I sold it. I didn't do it once, but I've done it twice. And I walked across the stage and got another master's degree. Prayer works. They want to take prayer out of school. Pretty sure that's how I passed, to be honest with you. God, give me a good grade, at least a C. I just want to get back. But it is. It's where it's at. Our prayer life just develops, and who we become is determined by how we pray. I really believe that. Who we become is determined how we pray. Ultimately, the transcripts of our life will become the script of our life and how you pray. I believe every blessing, every breakthrough, every miracle, and every dream has a genealogy. I believe you're here because of a byproduct of prayer. I can promise Mama Long prayed for this boy. I can promise you Mama White prayed for that boy. I can promise you Mike's wife and family were praying for him on down the line. There's a genealogy in every prayer. You don't know how far it goes, but I promise you it's there. Somebody says, well, I've been praying for this guy for 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Come on, man. My mom prayed for me for years, for years. There's a genealogy and all that. But miracles are byproducts of prayers that we have prayed by you or for you, and they should be the motivation for us to pray. Do you really believe in the power of prayer? I do. It's taken me a long time to get there, but I've seen it. But if I don't believe in it, it becomes the last result. You'd be amazed how many people I walk into their lives and I say, well, I guess the only thing we got left to do now is pray. Like it's the last effort. It should be the very first thing we're doing is praying. But for most of us, it becomes the last-ditch effort. We're going, well, we better pray for this. And it should be the very first thing that's going on in our life. It really should. It takes time to discover the rhythms and routines that work for you. Not everybody's meditation, not everybody's prayer life and how they do it is going to be the same for you. How I do it's not going to necessarily work for you. There's so many resources out there to do it. But my challenge to you is to be accountable in your prayer life. Not just in your step 10, but be accountable in your prayer life. What are you praying about? What do you think about? Tell me about it. What are you reading? What are you reflecting on? And there's so many resources out there, and we don't have time to go into all those. But lastly, it says, as we go through the day, we pause, and when agitated or doubtful, we ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We are then much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up foolish energy or energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. That's a great promise. That's just a powerful promise. He says we alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us. Why is that important? How is that important? Well, the opposite of pride is humility. Katie lifted it up in her talk last night. If I'm humble, God will guide me. I truly believe that. If I'm humble, God will bless me. If I'm humble, God will give me grace. And the Lord knows I need a lot of that. If I'm humble, God will give me the power to change. We have to remain humble. We have to remain green. Green things are growing. That's all part of the humility process. We never want to get to a place where we arrived. Well, Well-developed faith results in a well-defined prayers, and well-defined prayers lead to a well-defined life. My life has changed so much because of these exercises that I'm talking about. I don't want that to go away. And I know it can go away like that. I've done the funerals. I've been to the places. This is a good life, man. But we're walking a very fine line. Heaven or death, and not a fun death. I mean, it's that fine of a line. And we're walking it. I choose to stand in the light today. I want to stay there. I need you to do that. I need you more than I ever did in my life. I need you people to be in my life, to hold me accountable, to love me, to encourage me through the good times and the bad. Because tough times are going to happen. What a great way it is. As Tom would say, the size of our prayers depends on the size of your God. And if God knows no limits, then neither should our prayers. I mean, I want you to hear that. What do you pray for? Here's my life. Here's a really scary prayer. It's 2 words. Use me. Use me. That's what we're created for. I mean, it's been laid out for us. We're created to go out into the world to be a man. If you don't believe that, just go back to your room, look in the mirror at your thumbprint, your tongue print, your ear print, go on down the line. Nobody's ever had those before you or after you. Wrap your mind around that. If you need physical proof that you have a spiritual birthmark, there it is. You were created for a purpose. The narrative tells you you're worthless and a piece of crap and you're not ever going to amount to anything. That's because this jar is full. But you got to get that cleared out. So this new narrative starts speaking. God's got work for everyone here to do. Amazing things to do in your life. I mean, it blows my mind where my life's at today. I have 5 kids. Not counting the one that I lost that never did come back around. That's a whole different story, but I don't have time to share it. But I have 5 other kids. I didn't know I could fall in love with a little bald-headed woman with no teeth until they handed me one. And then another one. And today I got 4 kids and a son. Now, Susie brought 2 daughters and a son with her, and I have 2 daughters of my own. And they're awesome. They're all grown up. They've never seen this cat drink. They never even seen me cuss. And that's the true story. They haven't played golf with me, but prayer is an inheritance we receive and a legacy we leave. Do you pray for the people in your life? I mean, it's important. I send out this is something I've encouraged you all to do, especially with technology. Every morning, I create a little meditation, and I send it to all my kids. They're all scattered all over. But I just want them to know they got a little soul food in their life every day. I don't know if they read it. Sometimes I'll put on there, if you read this, I'll give you $1. and once in a while, hey, you owe me $1. You owe me $2. But I wanted them to have this soul food. I wanted them to experience this world of the Spirit. I wanted them to have this life that we live. I just want them to have it. It's beautiful. Mama Long, I'll close with this. My mama was the greatest winner in my life. Absolutely the greatest winner in my life. I didn't have a father. I didn't have any grandparents. I never had anything. Mom was everything. She died in 2015. 2013, she came to church one day with me, and I was giving the message that day. She sat right where Steve's at, front row. My mom was a diehard, born, raised, all the way in Catholic. So here she's sitting in a Protestant church. She's already a nervous wreck. And we're sitting there, and it's Mother's Day, and the senior pastor comes out, and he's got 2 plants in his hand. He said, I got 2 plants, and I want to give them out today to 2 special women. First one was to this lady who had been a member of the church for many years. She was 90-something years old. And he goes, the other one we want to give to Mama Long, because that's what everybody called my mom, Mama Long. And she was startled for a minute. She goes, Mama Long, we want to give you this plant, because what you've done in this kid's life and the impact he's had on our community in this place is unbelievable. And we want to give you this plant. And they handed her the plant, and they gave her the microphone. Said, would you like to say a few things? And this is what my mom said. Simply this: don't thank me for this kid's life. Thank Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought, great, Mom, you just broke my anonymity in front of my When my mother died, 2015. She got cancer. and lived 8 days. She got diagnosed, but never made it out of the hospital. Got diagnosed, lived 8 days. But when I got there, in the last day she was alive, I was sitting in a room with my kids and my sisters, 2 half-sisters, my brother. All of us were there, and I look around the room, this life that we have, living in the world of the Spirit. I didn't owe anybody nothing in that room, man. Nothing. I was good with everybody in that room. I was good with Mama Long, been good with Mama Long for many years. But I was good with everybody. It was a freedom of this life that she'd given me. And the night before my mama died, it was her last words. She was laying there, and she loves Frank Sinatra, and I know I'm out here in New York, so I got to mention this. And I took a little CD player and I put in a Frank Sinatra CD. And I took these little foam headphones and I put them on her ears, and it was the last time she ever opened her eyes. You could see the death in her eyes, and she opened her eyes and like startled, like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Don't worry about it, Mom. It's just a little Frank Sinatra." And her last words to me were, "Everybody needs a little blue eyes." And then she died the next morning. I got a poster on my wall. I got a framed poster of Frank Sinatra in the bottom that says, "Everybody needs a little blue eyes." My mama was the greatest prayer warrior in the world. She prayed for me. I could promise you I'm standing here today because of Mama Long. And prayer is important for all of us. We need to be praying, folks. If you suck at it, look at your relationship with God. It isn't because you're not praying right. It isn't because you don't have the right tools or the right books or the right resources. It's because this relationship with your power greater yourself is fractured, and we've heard it all weekend. Ken lifted up. We ask God. We ask God. We ask God. If that relationship is tainted, we're not going to ask God. We're going to do what we always did and just fall back into self-reliance. Our spiritual life becomes this, our fingers crossed, hoping tomorrow's better than it was today, right? I'll tell you this as I close out. What you do when nobody else is looking says more about you than anything on the planet. You want to know what your spiritual life is like? What are you doing when nobody's watching? It's the greatest measure of where your life is. We went to the grave site yesterday to watch Dr. Soapworth. Powerful experience, been there before. But this is what Charlie started with, and I'm going to close with it. The doctor's opinion. It's what this little blue-eyed doctor had to say to all of his readers still today. All the atheists, the agnostic, all of us that are broken. This is how he closes out doctor's opinion. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps he may scoff, that he remain and pray. We need to pray, folks. I'm praying for you. I hope you keep praying for me. I need all the prayers I can get, brother. It's been an amazing ride. It's been an amazing journey. Our book ends this chapter and says we're going to move on to step 12, and Beth's going to take us there. It's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be awesome. It's been a great privilege. It's a great privilege to be here. Typically what I do on Sunday mornings, this is where my life's at today. This little weasel that was in a 9-by cell headed on his way back to penitentiary. Today I'm a senior pastor at a big church in Branson, Missouri. Typically on Sunday mornings I'm sitting in front of a congregation about this size, talking about what God wants to do in our lives. How do you go from that jail cell to everything and where my life's at, to where I'm at today? Tell me there ain't no God. It's a pretty cool life. I'm glad I get to live it, and I thank you for it. That's all I got.